this knowledge that not only do our rights are they intrinsic to us, but they're endowed by our Creator, and they can't be taken away from us. Where did they come up with all of this? Because those are the guys who put it into our founding documents. Those are the guys who got the whole ball rolling for us as Americans. But where did they get it from? Where did it come from? And that's something that we want to look at. So the notion that they had was that we're all created equal, right? That we are all the same. We're all on that same slate when we're born. But the truth is we're not all equal. We are all uniquely different, every single one of us, down to our fingerprints, our personalities, our size, our shape, our eye color, hair color, our abilities. Some of us are good at this, some of us are good at that. We are all different in a indefinite number of ways. How is it that all of these different beings who have nothing in common, well, I won't say nothing in common, but have nothing that's duplicated, how is it that they're all equal when obviously they're not all equal? How is that? And that's part of what we want to look into. How did they come to this notion that we're all equal? Well,
because we are.
In the eyes of God, we're all equal. And I think that's part of where they were coming from. Now, we can say a lot about America being a Christian nation. We can talk a lot about a Judeo-Christian heritage. We can talk about the faith of our founders. And these are things that people have talked about for years. And we've seen everything on both sides of it, that they were very religious, that they were all atheists, and they were all Freemasons, and they were all kinds of things. And you'll see all kinds of theories and stories and stuff come up about them. But the truth is that they had some things in common. All of these men of different backgrounds. Now, our founding fathers, some of them were highly educated, some were self-educated. Some were lawyers, some were soldiers. They all came from different economic backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, different parts of these 13 colonies that spanned across the eastern seaboard. So they had a lot of things that were different, but there were a few things that they had in common. And among those things that they did have in common was that they all read the Bible. And they knew it, and they understood it. They had references to people like John Locke and William Blackstone, the writers who had preceded them in the 1600s into the 1700s. They had this material to read from. So where they had this vast background, they had a common entity, something that tied them together, and it was the things that they were reading that tied them together. And these things had that foundation and that principle that we are all equal in the eyes of God. Now, whether they were religious or not religious, or whether they were faking it or whatever, that's a whole other debate for a different day. But this is how they came to it. And when Jefferson wrote it into the Declaration of Independence, that we are endowed by our king, our president, the guy down the corner, no. We are endowed by our Creator. The acknowledgement that there is something that created this. There is something that put this together. It didn't just happen by chance. There's a divine hand in here somewhere. He didn't go as far as to select which religion was right and who was wrong. He didn't play that shell game. He left that up to you to decide. But we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights and so on and so forth. John, what do you want to chip in?
Well, it's like Napolitano, when he speaks of natural rights, he always puts the caveat in there. He says, they're endowed by their Creator, or if you believe it's inherent in their nature. And I think it's true. I mean, you're spot on when you say they had common reference, and it's absolutely true. They had common reference. Even Locke, when Locke was writing his treatise, he speaks in terms of the Bible, right? He has references to Matthew and other biblical pieces, and he speaks in biblical terms because that was the common language of the day. That's the book that everybody had read. I really don't know if we were having this debate today, if we could have the same level of debate, because where is our common language? Where is our common reference point? it probably is still the Bible. I think a lot of pro-liberty minded people still use biblical backing for their belief structure because it is such a powerful common reference, and because it personally has a deep meaning to them. So,
But
Yeah,
they
but
answered your question. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are the common goals.
right. Right, and John, you also hit on it. You said they whether they were faking or they believed it or not, which is true because a person does not have to be a Christian or Jewish or Muslim or any Abrahamic religion. They could come from an Eastern tradition or whatever, but if they've read those texts and they've understood those texts, it gives them a frame of reference to discuss the ideas expressed within it.
yeah, and that's exactly it. When we talk about just for a second here, the separation of church and state, that's the point that they were talking about. So that this federal government, this government that they were going to put together, could not say this religion is our official religion, all others are not, because you're all wrong. This is the one that gave us the rights and the liberties and the freedoms. Is this God, not your God? They wanted to stay out of that debate because they understood that it was something that was personal, and they wanted that separation. That's what they meant by separation of church and state, that there would not be a state religion, therefore forsaking all the other religions. They wanted to make sure they stayed away from that. When looking at this here, as I'm going through my notes that I prepared for the show, now why would anyone believe that we're all created equal? How do you come to that in a natural sense? Just, a guy sitting there looking at the stars going, we're all created equal. How do you come to that kind of conclusion? That we should all be free, right? That's another thought. Why would you think that we should all be free? That all of us deserve to have a voice in choosing our leaders. What would make you think that we all should be joined into choosing that leader, right? We go back in just a moment, we'll see that that was not the case at the beginning of all of this. Why would any nation consider this as being self-evident? Which at the time in 1776, when they put this out, that self-evident truth, that was really a slap in the face to every government in existence at that point in time. All those monarchies, all those kings and queens throughout Europe, this is not what they wanted to see. You were letting the cat out of the bag, telling the people that actually the king and queen, they didn't give you the rights. God did. You have them the moment you took your first breath. The rights were yours, not theirs to give you. That's high treason. Heads will roll for that. So they were really putting themselves out there and really isolating themselves at that point, as if they weren't already in enough hot water with England. When they put that out, they understood they were signing their death warrants when they signed that. And that's why John Hancock has such a wonderful signature. He put his front and center, big and bold, make sure everyone can see. There it was. He was setting that example. In following this through, we'll jump right back to the beginning of all this, and we'll go and talk about a guy named Solon in ancient Greece. And he was a statesman, a lawmaker, a poet. He was like the jack of all trades for that day and time. He was like the Bob Dylan of his era. I think might be a pretty good analogy. Yeah, he kind of did everything. Solon goes from 839 BC to 553 BC. So we're talking 500 to 600 years before Christ. All right, we're going back to ancient Rome or ancient Greece, where they've all got the the white sheets and the togas, and they're running around having a good old time, right?
Drinking a lot of wine, drinking a lot of wine.
A lot of wine, boy. They knew how to party, those guys, huh? You ever see Animal House with the toga party? That was those guys.
Toga,
Okay.
toga. So Solon, he was Athenian, right?
He was Athenian, yes, an Athenian statesman. That's his official description. And you can go to Wikipedia and look it up, and you'll find all kind of good information on him. He is remembered particularly for his efforts to legislate against the political, economic, and moral decline. His reforms failed in the short term, yet he is often credited with having laid the foundations for the Athenian democracy. And that's where we'll start with democracy there. Understanding the basic concepts of democracy, majority rules, right? It's ruled by the people. So if I can get a majority to agree with me, I win. If you get the majority to agree with you, you win. And basically 51% of the people rule over the 49% of the people. That leads to a situation where 51% get to vote. The 49 don't get to vote. So
Right.
minorities have no rights when it comes to democracy.
It's great if you have a homogeneous population, but the second that you don't, the second that you have any sort of subgrouping that can be picked on, the principle of open democracy, pure democracy, just rapidly dissolves.
And they can attest to that. They can attest to that in ancient Greece. That's exactly what it is. So, and that's one of the things that kind of, it sets us back sometimes when we hear people talk about the American democracy, the great American democracy. And it sticks in my head that, no, when I see a minority claiming or talking about their pride, their love for the American democracy, sometimes I shake my head and go, if you only knew what you were saying. Because in a democracy, you don't have any rights, any say in anything. You're the one who gets picked on 24/7. The minority is the punching bag in a democracy. That's just the way it turns out, because it's just the nature of man. Look at all the wars we've had over all of the millennia. It's our nature. And our founding fathers understood that when they put together our Constitution. They understood that. Going back to Solon and the ancient Greeks, they were just coming to that understanding. They were the ones who were really trying to sit there thinking about it. They were the ones sitting there looking at the stars going, what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of everything? How does it all work? They were starting to put all that stuff together. They didn't always get it right, but there were a few gems in there, and Solon was one of those gems. And he put together his writings. He tried to do reform, and he had limited success. I think it's probably the best that we can afford him at this point. By giving common people the power not only to elect officials, but also to call them to account, Solon appears to have been established the foundations of a true democracy. And that's really what he set up. And as John mentioned before, it doesn't last very long. It usually crashes and burns pretty quickly. And our founding fathers, particularly James Madison, when he went back in preparing for the the convention, he studied these, and this is what he interpreted. Looking back at democracy, is that's not good. We don't want that. And the other founders agreed with them. John.
Yes, sir.
Your thoughts?
No, you're absolutely right. You hit it on the money. And as we go along here, so when Solon came to these conclusions, the next people to really to act on advancing the idea of how do you keep man free from men would be Polybus. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And what Polybus did is he took that thought that people can be we can come up with good ideas and put good people in a position where they can then do good for us, because they're righteous people, they're good people, and we can trust them. And through their actions, we've learned that we can trust them. They've earned our trust. We can put them into power, and we can give them authority, and we can trust that they'll do the right thing for us. Wrong. Wrong, because absolute power corrupts how? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So